to Husker Hangover. I'm Brandon Shanahan. Every Sunday morning, we're live on Twitter, getting you the latest updates with the latest disaster in Nebraska football. We're live every Sunday on Twitter, and then wherever you enjoy our content, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast on Monday. And boy, what a stinker. The vibes aren't as good as they've been the last few weeks, but that's all right. Lost to Michigan State 20-17. Not a great performance. 3 turnovers. Henrik Harburg was bad once again. That stunk. It was a bad feeling. When I came up with the concept Husker Hangover, this is the hangover that I'm thinking of. It doesn't feel good. But I've slept on it now, and it doesn't feel good because of my expectations. This one's on me. Nebraska's still in a really good spot. They played fairly. Oh, they lost by 3 on the road to Michigan State. That's not something that should be felt as a disaster. Now, how the game unfolded, it was very ugly. We didn't make any good plays. We came out flat. We didn't deserve to win the football game. But it's done because of my expectations. That's on me. And when you take a step back, kind of review how this Nebraska's team's performed so far, I would have absolutely taken this. We're exactly where we're at today. If you had told me that we'd be right here, I would have signed up for it. Granted, I wouldn't have signed up for the Colorado 36-14 loss. There's no world where you can convince me that's a good win. But looking across the schedule, a 3-point loss to start the season against Minnesota on the road, 3-point loss, yeah, all right, whatever. It is what it is. Minnesota's not a bad football team. Nebraska's got a new coach, new quarterback, new everything. There's some growing pains. There's certainly some growing pains in that game. Then we take care of business, multi-touchdown wins against Northern Illinois, Louisiana Tech. That's fine. 45-7 loss to Michigan. Granted, I don't think that score indicates how lopsided that game was. Still, it is what it is. Michigan's, one of the best teams in the country. And then come back, go on the road, and beat up on Northern Illinois in a short week, mind you. Winning that game by 2 touchdowns, that was great. In a game where we felt like that could have absolutely been blown open more, excluding some turnovers, and then come back and, good win against Northwestern at home. Multi-touchdown win against Purdue at home. And, we go on the road. Michigan State, 20-17. Yeah, sign me up for that. Especially throwing the context that we're down more than 70% of our offensive starters since week 1. And by the way, an offense that scored a whopping 10 points against Minnesota. We didn't have talent. We didn't have a whole lot of talent to begin with. And that telling me that we're missing 75% of those guys, that's not great. So that's that. There is some solace, at least to me, that we lost this game because we weren't good enough to win. We didn't deserve to win, as opposed to the dozen or so games previously where I thought that we did deserve to win, but because of something like one missed punt return, or one missed or one blocked punt, something like that, somehow stings a little bit less. It's a little bit more numbing, but we feel sad. And that, I think, is a step in the right direction. We have expectations of this team. That's a step in the right direction. This time last year, I wasn't even watching the football games. I was so tuned out with the Huskers. So that's a win here. So I'm still pretty happy with where we're at. The disappointment comes from inside. Because like I said, all those things, we're 5-4. All we have to do is win one of the next 3 games to make it to a bowl game. And they're all winnable games. I don't know if we'll be favored in any of them. I don't think we'll be favored against Maryland. Definitely not favored against Wisconsin on the road. Probably not favored against Iowa at home. But that's a bowl game, still a huge win. Bowl game, gets a huge monkey off our back. And, I got a text from our good friend Tyler over the weekend, says, I'm wondering how Brandon's going to spin this into a positive. And here's what it looks like. The first year of this new coaching staff, and kind of, I don't know, I feel like this should be the expectation for every coaching staff that's new, that the first year it is just setting the tone, setting the foundation. You're creating a new precedent every week. And to me, this feels like a good precedent for what happens when you come out flat. I, the entire game, there didn't seem like there was any energy. Not by the offense, not by the defense, not by the special team. There was just no energy. And now the defense still played pretty well, played good enough to keep us in the game, and the offense was the offense. But it felt a little flat. And yeah, you go on the road, you play an 11 a.m. game. That's a little bit different than what we've had. But that's what happens. Even to teams that I still think Nebraska's a better football team than Michigan State. Michigan State's been awful this year. This was Michigan State's first Big Ten win. So you look at it and say, well, this is what happens. And, we talked about it. Tyler doesn't believe in letdown games. I believe that's exactly what that was. And now that's the precedent where if you go out, because there's been a couple of precedents set. If you turn the football over, you're going to lose, i.e. the Minnesota game. If you are shitting bricks about your opponent, you're going to get run over like Michigan. If you don't respond after getting punched in the mouth, you're going to get run over like you did against Michigan. I'm sure Colorado was a precedent. I'm trying to, burn that game from my memory, so I'm not able to come up with anything, but I'm sure there was a precedent set. And then, on Saturday, I was like, okay, well, this is what happens when you come out flat, when you start to kind of believe the hype and excitement around your football team and you have a letdown game. This is what happens. And I think that's a good precedent to set. I think that first year, there shouldn't be high expectations. So, yeah, let's, go through these growing pains. It is what it is. Growing pains. Because I think in the last regime, in the Scott Frost administration, the precedent was it doesn't matter how well we play, we're going to find a way to lose this game. It doesn't matter if we're up 2.5 touchdowns against Colorado. It doesn't matter if we're up 10 points against Iowa in the fourth quarter. We're going to get a block. It doesn't matter if we allow 2 first downs to Michigan State and East Lansing in the second half with a lead. We're going to find a way to lose. That felt like the precedent in the previous staff. This feels like a much more manageable, much more learnable precedent. So that's my positive spin out of it. Some other negatives. So Heinrich Harburg was bad. I'm sure we'll talk about him later this week. It is what it is. He's not good. He's not a good passer. He's a very good runner, very good athlete, and I think he's even a pretty good passer when he's able to get out in the open, get out moving. When he can use his arm angles, there's a beautiful pass to Anthony Grant where defender was right in his face, playing exactly where he needed to play. And then that's when Heinrich Harburg, throughout the sidearm motion, squeaked it around him, hit Anthony Grant on the back shoulder, and then he drops it. So I made a joke. He throws very few great passes that whenever he pulls out an absolute dime, the target's not ready for it. I mean, there's some truth to that. I mean, he doesn't get bailed out very often. So he's bad. I do think that he still is not. I still think he's the best option. It is what it is. Yeah, I mean, you can be angry about how bad our quarterback play is, but you also have to acknowledge all of our quarterbacks are healthy now. They're putting out the guy that they think gives them the best chance to win, and that's Heinrich Harburg still. And I mean, then that's not me saying it. That's Coach Rule and the staff with their decisions. That's what they're telling us. In his post-game presser last night, he said, yeah, there was never really a doubt. There was never really a conversation to make a switch. Jeff was ready. Jeff was suited up. Jeff even had his helmet on at some points, but yeah, there was never just like it was in Colorado when Jeff Sims was an absolute head case, and you get blown out because of it. There's no that they know best, But it is what it is. In my default stance, usually, I mean, not that we did a podcast the last couple of years, but with Adrian Martinez, Taylor Martinez, Tommy Armstrong, that so on and so forth. I trust the coaches to make this. They want to put the best guys out there. Why do we assume that they put the best players out there in 21 out of 22 spots, but then quarterback they're all of a sudden so dumb that they can't figure out who to play at quarterback? They know better. They know better than me. I did have some stance about Jeff Sims earlier this year that kind of contradicted that, but I like to default to the coaches know better. I don't know what this roster looks like. I don't know what the practices look like. I don't know who's more prepared. I don't know who's putting the work in. They do, and they're going to make the right decision because their jobs are on the line every week. So that feels like a lazy sports take, and there's a handful of like really lazy sports takes. There's a handful of, I think, genuinely lazy sports takes that you'll hear in every sports bar. And that's, all of the team's problems are solved by making a change of quarterback, or this whole thing gets turned around if the coach gets fired, or this whole thing, or we lost the game because the officials. And that's the last one I'm going to talk about here, because I do think there was a huge impact by some missed calls. And I say this is lazy as a typical take, because even though refs miss calls, and they miss calls every game against every team. Let's not get it twisted here. They miss every call. They miss calls against every team in every game. They probably missed some calls against Nebraska that I didn't pay attention to because of my, scarlet red glasses. But typically, you still have an opportunity to win the football game despite of that. Like when there was that controversial non-pass interference call during the Saints-Rams game a few years ago, where it certainly would have given the Saints an opportunity to kick a field goal and win the game, go to the Super Bowl eventually. They don't call the pass interference. Yeah, they don't get the opportunity to do that. But then what happened? But then the Saints win the coin toss to go into overtime, and then they have an opportunity to win the game. Go score. I think this was even before they changed the playoff rules. Get to the 40-yard line, kick a field goal. They're playing in the dome. There's no win. Go to the 40-yard line. Get to the 40-yard line. Kick a field goal, go to the Super Bowl. But no, they throw an interception. They lose the game because of it. And then they blame the refs after. That, to me, is so lazy. Even a couple weeks ago, when that team from Eastern Iowa had that weird, invalid, fair catch signal, that's super invalid because that's how the rule is written. Don't get mad at me. Don't get mad at the refs. Get mad at whoever wrote that rule if you don't like it. But then, okay, well, that call, it changes things a little bit, changes things quite a bit, admittedly. But then what happens? You have the ball with 90 seconds left. Get to the 30-yard line. You have a great kicker. Get to the 30-yard line, kick the field goal. You're down 2, so you win the game. And by the way, that's exactly what they did against Northwestern on Saturday. If they do that against Minnesota at home, bada bing, bada boom, you're 7-1 or 8-1 or however the numbers work. You have one loss. But you didn't. You get sacked, throw an incomplete pass, throw an interception. That's why you lost the game, because you weren't good enough to win. But they were given an opportunity to win. I think another example of what that opportunity looks like is the Super Bowl last year. That, to me, very touchy and soft holding call was such a difference maker, to where the Eagles didn't get an opportunity after that. As soon as that call was made, it's a wrap. The Chiefs can wind the clock down to like 12 seconds, kick a field goal, take the lead. And then, Jalen Hurts gets an opportunity at a Hail Mary. That's unrealistic, but nonetheless, they don't get an opportunity like Iowa did, like the Saints did. And I don't think here. So let me share my screen here, because there was a couple of really egregious missed calls when it comes to the officiating on Saturday. So let me move into here. Why is this shrunk? Okay. So yeah, we'll move it into here. So first of all, you get stuff like this touchdown. I don't know how you don't call that an incomplete pass. I mean, I don't know. It is what it is. You miss an egregious face mask. Like this is what the rule was meant for. You see so many ticky tacky calls where their hands get kind of caught up there. They don't really affect anything. This guy yanks him by the helmet. Like that's what that rule is there for. And then the spot on, that last drive where that's first down and stops the clock. Nebraska doesn't have any timeouts. And then this pass interference play, I don't know how you don't. This feels very egregious to me. Yeah, I don't know how you don't call that. But nonetheless, like I said, it's not about whether the call was right or the call was missed. Refs miss calls. It is what it is. They're humans. They're not perfect. But do you have an opportunity to win afterwards? And lo and behold, Nebraska has the ball with like a minute, some change left. They got a kicker with a cannon of a leg. Get to the 30-yard line, you win the football game. You don't have any timeouts, so you got to get first downs. We already talked about one that should have been a first down, but wasn't. Go get to the 30-yard line, kick a field goal, tie things up going to overtime. They hold the chips to their success there until there was some more bad officiating, which I feel like this elevates this to this class where Nebraska was not given an opportunity to win the football game because of officiating. That's that fumble, the forward pass. The fact that didn't get a second look in that spot in the game, the fact that didn't, that Malachi Coleman catch didn't get a second look, the fact that, and I get it, the refs are kind of swallowed their whistle the whole game, a la the missed face mask, a la the missed pass interference. It is what it is, but those are missed calls. This took away an opportunity for Nebraska to potentially go down, tie the football game, win the football game, whatever you want to say. And so, with that said, Nebraska didn't deserve to win this football game. They didn't lose because of the officiating. My point is that they didn't get an ample opportunity to negate the officiating. There's always that comment, well, just play so good that the officiating doesn't matter. Nebraska didn't get the opportunity to do that. They didn't get the chance to. So that's that. But yeah, like I said, they didn't lose because of that. They lost because they weren't good enough. To be honest, if they overturn that fumble and make it an incomplete pass, he might throw an interception the very next play. Yeah, that's more likely, I think, than him leading the troops down the field to the 30-yard line. But we don't know because he wasn't given an opportunity because of the officiating, which is a difference. So with that little spiel out of the way, let's get after some better, worse, the same. Sunday we go through who is better than what we thought, who is worse than what we thought, and what is the same as we thought. So we'll kind of jump back into it here. Whoops. There we go. Let me adjust this here real quick. There we go. All right, that looks like shit. No, it doesn't. It looks fine. So who's better than I thought? Oregon. I think the eye test tells me, and we can't go off the eye test. The games have to matter, and what matters is that they lost to Washington. So they can't be in this top tier. But my eyes tell me that they're the best team in the country. They looked outstanding, and I'm going to hear about it later this week because I bet the under in that game, and it was 59.5. That's a lot of points. And Oregon cleared it by themselves comfortably. And then Cal added on another 19 points on top of that. So they cleared by 22 points. That was a huge miss. Tyler had I didn't, so that stunk. Kansas is better than I thought. And I think all the talk coming into the season was, well, if Jalen Daniels is healthy, then this is a good football team. And if not, the wheels are going to fall off. That's not the case. Jalen Daniels is electric, and he does give Kansas the best opportunity to win a Big 12 championship. It's crazy that we're now through the first week of November, and they're in the thick of it. No, they got 2 conference losses. They're probably out of it, but Jason Mead's been fine. This team is fine. This team is still pretty good without Jalen Daniels this year, at least. So that's impressive to me. Now, Iowa State, let's not get it twisted. Iowa State's not a great team. They're still very young, but going into Ames in that setting, sold out crowd, Jack Trice, the most electric stadium in the state of Iowa. That's not nothing. That's not nothing. And they controlled that game pretty well. Like the score kind of indicates that Iowa kept it pretty close, but no, I would say I had to scramble to keep it that close. So credit where credit's due. Kansas is better than I thought. Louisville's a lot better than I thought. I think I had them. Actually, let me take a look because I'm curious what I had them at preseason. Let's see here. Just in case you missed it, before the season, I went through every Power 5 football team, went through their schedule, picked every game week by week. Let's see here. So I had them at 7-5, 6-2. Just in case you're curious, they are currently 8-1, and one of the ranked in the top 15. So let's see here. So Georgia Tech beating Murray State, winning Indiana, beating Boston College, beating NC State. They beat Notre Dame, which I had as a loss. They beat Pitt. No, they lost to Pitt. So I actually had that game right. They beat. So the losses kind of come into play. Wait a minute, I had them losing. Yeah, so here's my prediction. So I actually had them losing to Indiana. That was dumb. Had them losing to Notre Dame. I don't think that was a bad call. I didn't. So when I did the Power 5 teams, I did Power 5 conference teams. So I didn't do Notre Dame. So I didn't realize how tough of a stretch this would be going from Duke to Louisville to this and that. So Notre Dame's schedule is tougher than I gave them credit for. Had I known that, I probably still would have picked Notre Dame. I had Pitt as a loss. I actually got that one right. And then where it kind of falls off the wagon here is at Miami and at Kentucky. I think those are both very realistically pretty easy wins for Louisville there. So they're really good. I'm excited to see them in Florida State in the ACC championship game. I think that's kind of the only option at this point, unless Miami goes on a real run. I don't know. Worse than I thought, Big Ten officiating. We kind of went over that. The new 4 Big 12 teams, holy smokes, they stink. They stink. Oh my gosh. I thought, now granted, they're coming from the group of 5. It's a different ballgame. Let's not get it twisted. So there's got to be some grace. And a lot of teams struggle. TCU struggled out the gates when they joined the Big 12. It takes some time. However, I just felt like these 4 teams in particular had an opportunity to kind of, speed that trend up. Or you have them as the 5 out of the bottom 4 teams of the Big 12. Shout out Baylor, who's been, what a disaster they've been. So you kind of look at it. So UCF, they have the 1 win against Cincinnati. Cincinnati has 0 wins in the conference. Houston, arguably has done the best out of them. They have wins against West Virginia, Hateful Eight team, and then Baylor, a Hateful Eight team as well. So their 2 wins are oddly enough against hateful eight teams, and with Cincinnati and UCF, there's a chance they win 4 conference games. Dana Holgerson kind of has that, kind of needs that. And then BYU, they have a win against Texas Tech, if I'm not mistaken, and then a win against Central Florida. Yes, they have wins against Texas Tech and Cincinnati. So, outside of that, they've all been pretty bad. I think they'll get better. I think that they'll get better for sure. I think those teams are still adjusting to Power 5 football, and that's fair. That's fair. It'd be unfair to say otherwise, to really put real expectations on the season. But I did have all of those teams a little bit better than what they're doing. Notre Dame's not great. The hype has kind of died down from Sam Hartman. As handsome as he is, he makes too many mistakes. And Clemson, I don't think is very good. So that's a tough loss. It is on the road, so that's not nothing. And Clemson's defense has always been good. Unless you have their signals and Spencer Rattler, then you can kind of expose them pretty well. Teams that I felt the same about, they're all SEC teams because I'm right about the SEC. It's just an honorable mention here. The SEC doesn't play any defense. There's over 1,000 yards of offense between Alabama and LSU last night. Ole Miss could not get a stop. Every time that Texas A&M got past the 40-yard line, they went 5 for 6 with 5 touchdowns. They did have a pretty bad pick, but I'd still give more blame to TCU than credit, or more blame to Texas A&M than credit to Ole Miss. That game was awful defensively. It is what it is. So that's an honorable mention here. Florida, I was right. I'm pretty sure I'm right about Florida here as far as their football team goes. I told you they weren't going to go to a bowl game. I predicted 4 wins. So I had them pretty well mapped out. I had them losing to Utah, I had them beating McNeese State, I had them losing to Tennessee. That's the difference here. And then beating Charlotte, losing to Kentucky, beating Vanderbilt, beating South Carolina. Well, let me take a look here. It's either, I think it was like a swip swap to where I had them losing. Yeah, here we go. So here's what I predicted. So I had them losing to Utah, beating McNeese State, losing to Tennessee, and they won that game. So that's one miss. Beating Charlotte, losing to Kentucky, which they did, beating Vanderbilt. Then I had them losing to South Carolina. Yeah, and then here's what happens. And then I had them losing to Georgia, of course. And then I had them beating Arkansas, which they did not do. And now you look at their schedule. I'm going to be wrong here as well, because I think they're going to lose to Missouri. But they're at 5 wins already. They need to win one of these next 3 to make it to a bowl game. That was my big stance, was I think they're going to win 4 games. I could be wrong, and they might win 5 games, but they're not winning 6 games. They're not getting to a bowl game, and that's where I feel good about, because I think they're going to be double-digit dogs to LSU, depending on Jaden Daniels if he's available. And that opens them up, even if he is available, and not 100%. Then Missouri's been awesome. They didn't look like they played the same sport as Georgia on Saturday. That's not nothing. Granted, they didn't win, and Georgia kind of pulled away late, but they played the same sport, which Florida did not play the same sport when they played Georgia on a neutral field, mind you. So that's that. And then Florida State. Florida State's not losing that game. I'm sorry. They're not. They need that game too much. So that's that. Alabama, they're good too. They're good. I think there was a lot of folks ready to kind of write them off once they lost to Texas. That's who they lost to. But here is kind of how I predicted it. A little bit off here because I had them beating Texas and then losing to Texas A&M. So those are flip-flopped. But really, my take was They're not going to lose to LSU and Tennessee in back-to-back games. Those two teams, they're not losing to those two teams in back-to-back years. So then find me other losses on the schedule. Granted, Texas was a loss. Texas A&M was a win, but you look at that schedule, Ole Miss at home, they win. At Mississippi State stinks. We'll talk about them here shortly. They're not excused from this list. Arkansas stinks. Tennessee, we talked about them. Kentucky's not very good. Chattanooga and then Auburn's not very good. Find me 2 losses on the schedule. And I was right. I was wrong about exactly how they got there, but overall, I was right. So we got there. So 11-1 looks like it's going to be the mission for Alabama. And the last one, Mississippi State, have been right about all year. Just kind of want to take another victory lap. And here's why I want to take a victory lap, because I didn't predict that Will Rogers was going to go down with injury, and that's very unfortunate. That really derails a bad team, right? Will Rogers might win another game or two here, but overall, what are we, 9 games into the season? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm 8 for 9 here. So we look here, Southern LA, that one. I had them beating Arizona, they did. I had them losing to LSU, they did. I had them losing to South Carolina, they did. I had them losing to Alabama, they did. I had them beating Western Michigan, they did. I had them losing to Arkansas, they won that game. They did beat Arkansas with their backup quarterback. I was pretty wrong about how good Arkansas was going to be. So there's that. And then I had them losing to Auburn, losing to Kentucky, and I feel pretty good that they're going to lose in College Station, especially without Will Rogers. They should beat Southern Mississippi still. Then I think they'll lose to Ole Miss minus anything crazy. So just want to throw that out there. I was right. And I had a lot of people tell me that I wasn't right. Look at this, 17 replies. I mean, honestly, a very clean ratio here. So 7 replies, 17 replies, 7 retweets, 12 bookmarks. By the way, I'm pretty sure that bookmark number has gone down as the season has progressed. So after the season goes, I'll go back and take a victory lap. And I want to take a victory lap, not because I think that, I'm right, look at me. But when I went through this exercise of picking every game for every Power 5 football team, it was more so a challenge to myself to put this out there. How good am I? How much do I actually know? And there was a couple of fan bases that reached out to me. I was like, hey man, I don't think that's right. And then I asked every single one of them, what did I get wrong? I'm a Nebraska fan. I don't know much about Mississippi State. I don't know much about the SEC. I don't know much about Auburn. I don't know much. But I'm trying to learn. What did I get wrong? And oddly enough, 0 people reached out with qualified answers to that question specifically. I guess I did have some good banter with Mississippi State fans, because one of my big gripes was that they don't bring back many starters. Then I was reminded that, while there's not a whole lot of starters returning, there's still a lot of senior talent that's going to be stepping up this year. That's been on the team. That's been through this tragic transition since Mike Leach's passing. So that's that. So I did get some information out of it, and those obviously aren't the folks I'm going to take a victory lap on. Pending I'm right the next 3 weeks. Or I could even be wrong about Southern Mississippi. I wouldn't be upset about that. So just want to throw that out there. And just trying to learn. Next year, hopefully get better. But this one was a win. I'm pretty sure. I guess we'll have to see if they come out and win 2 of the last 3. If they beat, who else do they play? Ole Miss and Texas A&M. Yeah, if they beat those guys, then I don't know what to tell you. So yeah, well then, no words. But that's all I got. So we got an exciting week coming up. So we got Corners Connection, a couple episodes of that coming out. Go Big 12 or Go Big Home coming out on Tuesday as well. And then hopefully on Wednesday, going to try to do Wednesday or Thursday, do a live stream and go through conference championship scenarios here. Now that we're really starting to get narrowed in, the Big 10 mess, West is a mess. And Kelly Ford does these really good ratings where it's leverage. So if you lose, here's what happens to your conference championship odds. If you win, here's what happens to them. Here's where you're at now. So we're going to kind of use that to kind of dial in a little bit more. So I'm very excited about that. So we'll got plenty of stuff for you here coming up this week. As always, go Big Red.